Hi there everybody, Gus the Hut here, and I'm here today to show you how to paint rust effects. So I'm basically just going to be showing you how I painted this. I have here a before and after. We have one here that's just been base coated in a basic silver colour. I used a Humbrol spray paint, their aluminium colour, or aluminum for my watchers from across the pond. So what we're going to be doing today is showing you the basic techniques of how to turn this into this. And here are all the paints that you are going to be needing. So I'm trying to do this effect with the minimum of colours, just to try and show you how to do a very basic rust effect. You can do it more complicated by adding more layers or using weathering powders, but if you're just using Games Workshop Citadel paints, then these are the 5 pots that I used for this, on top of the Humbrol spray paint that I used to do a base coat. You can paint this by hand with a brush, just using that. So it's a sort of a slightly brighter colour, but you can get a similar effect with a different metallic from Games Workshop Citadel's range. But I took the shortcut version and just spray painted that to get a nice even coat. So then, let's get down to the first step. First of all, what I'm going to do here, the way I did this with 2 different types of rust effect. The first and darkest one is a bit more complicated, whereas the second is basically just the metal colour where the rust dust has spilled over onto the non-ferrous parts of the model. Okay, so we're going to start off with a sort of a brown base colour for the more rusted panels. I'm going with Gauthar brown. You can go slightly lighter or darker depending on your personal taste. If you want a very dark, dirty rust colour, then you go for a darker one. I've already watered down some paint in my palette here. So I've got a regular standard Citadel brush. I'm just going to be applying a coat of the brown very haphazardly over the armour plating. Now, my ideas behind the 2-tone rust is basically, it's for my Heretics and Renegades army, and the idea is that they've scrounged together a bunch of different hardware that has been left derelict for a while, and they've basically repurposed it. And the idea that they've cleaned up all the working parts, the barrels and the firing chamber and everything that moves, they would have done the most minimal amount of upkeep work on it as possible, whereas anything non-essential to the function of the weapon and that, they would have just let it rust.
That's looking good.
So yeah, you just put a nice coat all the way over the areas and that you want to be fairly rusty. I'll probably leave this. I'm trying to remember what I did on the other one. Yeah, I left the joining part, the moving part was left metallic, and you can see that slightly brighter colour. And so you just go over all the areas and that you want really rusty in your brown colour. Yeah, you just do that over everything you want to be really rusty, and then go on to the next step. Okay, so now that we've finished the brown coat off, covering over any areas and that you want to look slightly rustier than the main body, we're now going to move on to the next step, and we're going to take a metallic silver colour. I'm using Runefang steel here. Now you want this slightly brighter than your base colour. What we're going to do is dab with a piece of sponge. This is a piece of an old figure case, one of the old Games Workshop cases, and I took some of the foam out of it. And I've already put some of the silver colour onto my palette here. So we just dab a little bit onto our sponge and wipe off any excess. Now you want this fairly dry, so almost like a dry brush technique. And just what we're going to do is just dab it, especially paying extra special attention around the edges where it will be a bit more worn. You can see it just, you can do the odd little dab here and there just to fill in the middle, but you want to pay particular attention around the edges. It just gives it that sort of chipped and corroded look. Don't worry too much if you get like big splodges like that. It's not the end of the world. Go along here. Just this will sort of break up the colour later on, so it won't look too uniform and it will look good and dirty. Trying to get in around the edges. Like I said, you can just do the occasional little dab. Yeah, turn it around, get a bit more now. And a sponge. Just making sure we're going all the way around. If there's bits that can't be seen very easily, then it doesn't matter if you really miss them. At the end of the day, this is not a showpiece, this is for the gaming table, so if you do end up getting a little bit wrong here and there, as long as it looks good from a distance, then it doesn't need to hold up under too much scrutiny. Okay, so I'm going to be back after I've finished dabbing that all over. Okay, so now we've finished doing our chip damage dabbing. Next phase, we're going to apply a wash. Now we're going to use a brown coloured wash. I'm using Citadel shade Agrax Earth shade for this particular part of the model. And what we're going to do is I'm going to use a fairly old brush here. This is a bit worn, as you can well see, but nice big brush and that, and I'm just going to give it a good coat of wash all over the model. So just completely covering the model, making sure that your wash is seeping into all the areas. Now don't be too stingy with this, don't try and drag it out too far, because all you'll end up doing is just, if you dry your brush out too much, all you'll end up doing is just, as you can see, I'm just sucking out all of the wash from all the details. You don't want that. So you just want to apply a nice, not too heavy that you can only see the brown wash, but heavy enough that it just sort of runs in to all the details. It just brings them up nicely. You can see already that it's starting to take on a sort of worn, oily, dirty look, which is what we want for this particular model. Yeah, just working into all. If you do end up covering like too heavily over those flat areas and that, just sort of move on to a different area, start working on there, dry your brush out a little bit, then just go back and almost use it like a palette to sort of pick up more of the, until you're, just pick up more of the ink until you're happy with the area. So fairly happy with that now, so I can move on. And just go over the whole model with that. Yeah, I'll finish that off and then I'll be back to show you the next step. Okay then, so now we've applied our wash to our entire model and we've let that dry. You can see that's already looking quite good as it is. It's quite dirtied up. Got a nice ruddy brown chipped paint look on it, but we're going to go a bit further. First of all though, what I'm going to do, you'll see that I haven't washed around the wheels. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to apply a layer of Typhus Corrosion instead of the brown wash. And now what this will serve to do is, these are sort of moving parts, they're going to be in contact with the ground a lot, they're being worn away, and so I want them to look a little bit more corroded than the rest of it, so you want a nice gritty look to it. Now I'm also going to apply this Typhus Corrosion to the foot plate there as well, because sees a lot of footfalls, that's where people stand wiping their feet on it, so that's going to get worn away quite a lot as well. So with this I'm just going to be using this straight from the pot, same as our wash. And now what this is basically, it's a really thick brown wash, but it's got little bits of like swarf in it. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's got a gritty texture. I don't know if you can, don't know if my camera can actually zoom in that closely. Probably not. No. But yeah, there's a lot of actual small bits in that paint. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply a layer of it all around, quite thickly, all around the wheel. Now, I've only used this paint a couple of times, but I'm quite pleased with the results on it. As you can see, it covers the base colour quite well, but if you sort of drag it out a bit, especially on more detailed areas like there, you should just about be able to get a little bit of the metallic colour showing through. But I want to go quite thick on this because it's supposed to look muddy and really dirty and worn, and it's supposed to look rusty underneath anyway, so you can just get into all of the areas. Just give that a good coating. Same on the other side. Like I said, I'm just going to do some on the small coat just on the base plate, the foot plate here. Doesn't matter if it goes over a little bit, as long as you're not going too far over. It shouldn't matter too much. You can see just how ruddy that is. So I'm going to finish applying that and let that dry, and we'll be back with the next bit. Okay then, so now that we've got our nice rusty wheels on there and the rusty foot plate, what we're going to do now is move on to the final stage. Now what we're going to be using now is Citadel Dry Brush Riser Rust. This is a lovely little paint. I really adore using this. It gives you a nice rust effect. Now what we're going to be doing here, just get a piece of kitchen roll here. What I'm going to do is take an old ratty brush. We're going to be using a sort of dry brush stippling effect here. And yeah, just this is an old brush, Make sure you're using a brush that you don't mind ruining, or get a specialist stippling brush, which I don't have. I just like to use reuse old brushes and that, repurpose them, so save myself a bit of money. Now what we're going to do is just get a little bit of the rust colour on the end of our brush here. What we're going to do is just wipe off the excess, and what we're going to do is we're going to be doing a sort of stabbing and twisting motion like this. So we're twisting the brush and stabbing it. And we've got to get it down to a nice, there we go, a nice sort of level where we're happy with. And basically what you're going to do is just start working that onto around the edges, and you can see that's already starting to pick up there. Yeah, probably go a little bit heavier actually, making sure to get any globules off of the overhanging parts of the brush. So yeah, we're just sort of going round, paying major attention to the edges. Doesn't matter if you miss bits, doesn't matter too much. You don't want to go so heavy that you completely cover up all of this chipping effect that you've already done. You want some of that to show through. But yeah, you can already see that it's starting to bring out a nice tone. Now with the sort of bits that we haven't covered in the brown and that, you just do a general dry brush, just like you would any other dry brush. Yeah, just go over the middle bit there. Yeah, we're already getting quite a nice effect there, as you can see. And it's already starting to match our previous effort. Yeah, just go over that globule there a bit. We're just going to go around the whole model with that. Now with the areas that you haven't done in the brown, we're mainly just going to do a regular sort of dry brush like this, because the idea here is that this area itself isn't rusty. It's that the dust from the areas that are rusty has sort of blown across it and sort of tainted it, but it's still in good working order. So we just sort of do a regular dry brush over those areas. Doesn't matter if you go too heavy, then just go back to your stippling effect. Stipple and twist. I wonder if that phrase has been coined. So there you go, you got a little bit of overspill there from one of the extremities, had a little too large a glob on it, so you just dry your brush off and just brush that over. It doesn't look too bad. And just go around your whole model with that. Now what you're going to do on the wheels and the foot plate here is, once again, just going to do a general dry brush, but you're going to do a very light over dry brush. So you just want to pick up all the raised pattern on there and just bring it out. You can go heavier all round the outside of it, but just as you're doing that, just do that ever so lightly. Yeah, and right, I'm going to go around the whole model, and we'll be just once again just a light overbrush over the areas that have had the typhus corrosion. You just want to pick up the upper layer of that. There you go. Don't want to go too heavy over that, because you want it to look a bit more worn and corroded than the rest of it. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to finish this off, and then be back to show you the finished product. And here we have it, the finished product. Let's get a good look at that. I'm fairly happy with that. You can obviously go heavier or lighter with the rust effects. Obviously this is supposed to be an old disused piece of hardware that's been brought back into service. And yeah, you can apply it to lots of other models as well. You can apply it on a smaller scale to if you wanted to do like rusty armour on a fantasy model, or a Nurgle Space Marine. You could do it. I've also done it on Illuminrus. It's come up quite nicely. You can give it your own decorations afterwards. So like there, I've given it chaos symbols using the Blood for the Blood God technical paint. Yeah, but there it is with its brother. Ready for the battlefield. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, share it with your friends. I've also done a product review of this particular model. It's from Cromlech. It's their Imperial Siege Mortar. I'm going to be using them as the Forge World heavy mortars for my Heretics and Renegades army. The models are slightly cheaper than they are at Forge World, and quite a nice design. Slightly different design. I'm not quite sure how they compare size-wise, but I quite like the look of these models, so they sort of drew me to it. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, I hope to see you all again very soon. See you later.